Hi there, this is Jeff Stage. I'm the senior editor at the American Philatelic Society, working with the monthly American Philatelist and the Philatelic Literature Review. I'm from Syracuse, New York. This is where I've lived most of my life. After school, I went to work for the Syracuse newspapers, the daily newspapers here in Syracuse, where I worked in many editorial departments. I started as a sports writer and sports editor, and I worked with every department possible. And I was there for 36 years, and then in 2013, there was a great layoff in the industry. I saw an ad and applied for a job at the American Philatelic Society in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. And I got that job, and I went down to headquarters there, the Match Factory, and I worked for 3.5 years in the editorial department. And then I returned to Syracuse because I needed to be near friends and family. I'm very happy to be back with the APS because I can be immersed in stamp world every day. And what's exciting about working at the APS for me is that there isn't an edition that goes by, maybe even a story that goes by, that I don't learn something. So that's interesting for myself. And what I like to bring to my editing and writing is clarity, so the reader also learns something about the hobby. I've been a stamp collector for, let's say close to 60 years. And I learned something with, as I said, just about every article I read and edit and write. It's just such a vast hobby with so many different areas. So. There's a very exciting February issue coming out. There's a main theme of censorship. And we have 4 stories written by 4 different people, 4 different philatelists about censorship in the hobby. The main story is by Dan Mayo, and it's about collecting civil censorship. So he looks at a history of censorship, the many devices that were used, such as hand stamps and markings, tape, things like that, even wax and string that were used to mark covers, particularly items used that were censored. So that's one story. Another story by Ronald Klimley takes a look at some censorship that occurred during unrest in Poland in the early 1980s. That's very interesting. It gives another view. Our most recent, now former editor, Gary Lowe, gives us a look at some censorship items from Cyprus, which experienced some unrest and some censorship in the interwar periods in the 1930s. And then we have a 4th very interesting little story from Marge Sente, about a different kind of censorship. It was censorship that was created by administrators at a girls' boarding school, and they wanted to keep the girls safe, and they wanted to keep their morality at a certain level, so they instituted censorship of their mail. We have some other interesting items in the February issue. One is a nice story from Michael Heller that describes fractional rates in US postage before stamps, so the stampless era. And anybody who looks at a cover from the area might see something like 18 3/4. And it's like, well, how did that rate come to be, 18 3/4? And he takes a nice look at that and explains it very well. So it's a very interesting story that you should check out. There's a nice preview of a big international stamp show in Canada called Capex 22. I believe it's in June in Toronto. We have a review of that. Bob Lamb, in his nutshell column, takes a look at the tiny little Middle Eastern state of Oman. Wayne Youngblood has a Coast to Coast article, and it's a very popular one. He does once in a while of notes from the bottom drawer. And these are things that he's collected over time. One in there is a card, a postcard from a Holiday Inn motel. And it just looks like, you know, an everyday postcard you pick up from a hotel and send to somebody, but it has some interesting, very interesting background to it. The March issue of the American Philatelist is going to be another blockbuster theme issue. We are calling it Stamp Basics. And what that is just, if you look at a postage stamp, revenue stamp, whatever, and you can imagine it cut into layers. So the March issue will include full stories on paper, printing, gum, and overprints and cancels. Sort of a little bit of a surprise and a fun element in the March issue is going to be a story all about gum and how it's created and how it's placed onto stamps. And what's interesting about this article is that it was written many, many, many years ago. And readers may be surprised about how old the article is. I don't want to give it all away. And actually how clear and how direct it is. And the information in that article that's very old holds up to today, though, as I said, most stamps now are produced in a little bit different way with a pre-stick material that it's a self-stick stamp, as we know.